let yourself be free. Let's go back, let's go back, let's go way on back. I didn't even know you couldn't have been too much good. Just I ain't no psychiatrist, I ain't no doctor with degrees. It don't take too much hard to see what you're doing to me. You better think about what you're trying to do to me. Think, let your mind go, let yourself be free. Oh, freedom, 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 freedom. That's freedom, get freedom, 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 oh, freedom.
Okay, hi there. Today, for Algebra 1, I'm going to be covering Chapter 3-4 on solving multi-step inequalities. So again, and every time I teach a lesson on inequalities, I need to post this. When you multiply or divide both sides of an inequality by a negative number, you must flip the sign, which is the greater than or equal to sign, or greater than or less than, greater than or equal to, less than or equal to, any of those. All right, so back to this. So when I solve it, I treat it like an equal sign. You know, the only thing is when you multiply or divide by a negative number, that's the only time that it's any different. So first thing I'd like to do is get that 4t alone. So I'm going to get rid of the plus 9. Opposite of adding 9 is subtracting 9. So I get 4t. 21 minus 9 is 12. So I got 4t is greater than 12. Now I want to get rid of the 4. The opposite of multiplying by 4 is dividing by 4. And 12 divided by 4 is 3. So if I was going to graph this on a number line, I would go over here to 3. Here's 2, here's 4. Because it's one of these two, it's an open dot. If it's one of these two, it'll be a solid dot. So this is open. Greater than 3 is towards the 4. Okay, and that's my answer. Next one. So I want to bring my letters or variables to one side and the numbers to the other. So I'm going to start by subtracting 3n, which is not the only way to start, but it's the way I'm going to do it. 6n minus 3n is 3n. Now I need to move the minus 1. The opposite of subtracting 1 is adding 1. So I get 3n is greater than 8 plus 1 is 9. Next, I divide by 3. And 9 divided by 3 is 3. No need to flip the sign at all. N is greater than 3. Here's 3, 4, 2, open dot. Going towards the 4. 4 is greater than 3. All right, this one a little bit meatier. So I see parentheses and a number outside of it, so I'm going to do distributive property. 3 times t plus 1 is 3t plus 3 minus 4t. Okay, so since this is on the same side of the equal sign, that 3t and the minus 4t, you know, you really can just combine them, all right? So 3t minus 4t is negative 1t, or just negative t, plus 3 is greater than or equal to negative 5. Next, I want to subtract 3 to get that negative t alone. Now I got negative t, negative 5, and negative 3 is negative 8. Now I have to get rid of that negative sign. Remember, there's an implied 1 in front of that t, so the opposite of multiplying by negative 1 is dividing by negative 1. Now I need to flip the sign, okay, because I divided by a negative number. And that's the time when it usually comes up, is at the end when you divide by what's in front of that t. You know, if it's a negative number in front of that t, you know you're going to flip that sign. Negative 8 divided by negative 1 is positive 8, and that's what my solution is. If they asked you to graph it, it would be a solid line. Let's see, t is less than or equal to 8, which means it goes towards the 7, because that's a number that's less than 8. That's the answer. Okay, here's a you try. Why don't you do that one, see if you can get the answer. All right, so that's a you try, you do it. If you do it correctly, you should get this as your answer, okay? Next one, number 5. So once again, these are on this. These x's here are on the same side of the inequality. So I'm just going to combine them together. Okay, negative 1x. There's an implied 1 there. Negative 1x plus 4x is 3x. You can put the 8 first or second. Order doesn't matter when you're adding or multiplying. Only when you divide or subtract. Okay, so I got my variables are on one side, but my numbers are on both sides. So I'd like to get my numbers to the other side, away from the variables, which leaves me with 3x is greater than or equal to 14 minus 8 is 6. Oh, this is shaping up nicely. Can divide by 3, and I get x is greater than or equal to 2. So if you were to graph this, it would be here's 2, solid dot, here's 3, here's 1. Greater than 2 is that way, so that would be the way you graph your answer. Okay, this one. Parentheses with a number outside of it implies you should be doing distributive property. Negative 6 times 2y is negative 12y. Negative 6 times 2 is negative 12. All right, so next I'm going to get my y's alone, bring my numbers to the other side here. 12 plus 12 is 24. Is that an equal sign? Sorry, that's not right. That should be greater than or equal to. My bad. All right, so negative 12y is greater than or equal to 24. So next I'm going to get rid of what's in front of that y, which is connected by multiplication. The opposite of multiplying by negative 12 is dividing by negative 12, which means I get y. Got to flip the sign because I divided by a negative. 24 divided by negative 12 is negative 2, right? And if you didn't say, I'm not going to graph that one. I've graphed a lot of them. I think you get the idea. Okay, so next, I can combine like terms. Once again, remember that subtraction sign sticks to that 2.5t, all right, not to the 3.5. So when I combine these two, once again, I made a mistake on the sign here. It should be that. Okay. 0.5 minus 2.5 is negative 2t plus 3.5. It's less than or equal to 1.5t. All right, this ain't so bad. It's just decimals, and then 0.5s, which really is an easy decimal to work with. Next, I'd like to get this alone. So the opposite of adding 3.5 is subtracting 3.5. Whoa, hang on a second. I'm making a mistake here. So I have t's on both sides. Sorry, I had a momentary lapse there. So what I'd like to do is get my t's on one side. So I want to get that one over here. Okay, so the opposite of adding negative t, 2t, is adding positive 2t. So I got 3.5 is less than or equal to 1.5t plus 2 is 3.5t. Okay, and next I want to get my t alone. Remember that the 3.5 and the t are connected by multiplication. The opposite of multiplying by 3.5 is dividing by 3.5. So I get t is less than or equal to 1. That worked out nicely. All right, and that's the answer. If you got questions, please bring them to class. All right, next one. Negative 2/3 is less than b plus 1/3. All right, so next, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to get that b alone. So the opposite of adding 1/3 is subtracting 1/3. And these cancel. So negative 2/3 minus 1/3 is less than b, which would give me negative 3/3. And negative 3/3 is the same as negative 1. So b is greater than negative 1. Sorry, you got to read it sometimes. All right, this one. parentheses with the number outside implies distributive property. 2 times 3w is 6w. 2 times 6 is 12. So, oops, this shouldn't be all, sorry, this should be a w, that's my problem. So 6w minus 2 is less than or equal to 6w plus 12. All right, so this one, I'm going to bring my numbers to one side. I'm going to subtract 6w from both sides. Ooh, and an interesting thing happens. All of my variables canceled, which means I'm left with this. So there's one of two solutions here. If this is true, it's going to be infinitely many solutions, and if it's false, it will be no solutions. Let me write that down for you. All right, so when all your variables cancel out, if what you're left with is true, then you get infinitely many solutions, and if it's false, you get no solution, okay? So this one over here, the question is negative 2 less than 12? Well, if you go look at it from a number line point of view here, you know, where is negative 2 compared to 12? You know, this is true because, you know, all negative numbers are less than all positive numbers. So you can see it's on the left of it. Therefore, this is true, which means this has infinitely many solutions. All right, so that's the answer to that one. Number 10, here's a you try. Why don't you try that one? See what you get. Okay. All right, this one. I saved this one. I think this is my last one. Yes, it is. All right, so I'm going to do, this one's got a trick to it. There's this subtraction sign in front of the parentheses, which means you're really doing distributive property with that negative sign, okay? The other way you could think of it is that there's an implied 1 there. So if I took negative 1 and I went multiplied it times the 4x minus 2, you can do it that way too. I kind of like this way with the negative 1. So negative 1 times 4x is negative 4x. Negative 1 times negative 2 is plus 2. You can see I just changed the signs of both the things inside the parentheses there. Really not much more complicated than that, but it's an easy thing to just subtract the 4x and leave it as minus 2 instead of changing it to plus 2. Okay, next, 2x plus 2 times 3 is 6. All right, so this is coming together nicely. I can combine some like terms here. This 12 and the 2 are on the same side of the inequality. I can just add them together. That's 14 minus 4x is less than or equal to 2x plus 6. Okay, so I just combine those two. Next, I'm going to bring my x's to one side. I think I'll add 4x. 2x plus 4x is 6x plus 6. Next, I'm going to bring my numbers to the other side. I got my 6x on the right. I want to have like all my regular numbers over here. And I get 6x is greater than or equal to 14 minus 6 is 8. And when I divide by 6, I get 8 over 6 is greater than or equal to x. That can be reduced. 8 divided by 6, you could either do a decimal. This is the same as 4/3, or as a fraction, it's 4/3. Or if I wanted to, here's something worth noting too. Suppose I put the x over here and the 4/3 here. I need to, if you read this one, it says x is less than 4/3, which means you have to actually flip the sign since I flipped what's on each side of the inequality. Okay, or I can also go x is less than or equal to 4/3 is 1.3 repeating. Okay, so any of those three answers is fine for me. Okay. All right, so that's what I got for today. I'm going to close it out with a little bit more music. Guys, have a great night, and I'll see you all soon.